Tom. Tom. All right, we're live. We're dialed in. What is going on?
Casey, are we on here? All right. Hi again, everybody. It's great to be with you here on Dialed In. I'm Tom Brenneman. Don't know what was happening there at all. Have no idea what was going on. And so I apologize. We welcome you to Dialed In. I'm having some issues here, Casey, with this thing talking back to me. How can I fix this?
Do you have our stream pulled up? Are you on our YouTube? So you just got to mute it on the video player on YouTube.
I tell you, I'm a mess. A total mess.
Wouldn't be a Chatterbox production without that.
All right, is that better?
Is it better? Can you hear us good?
I hear you fine.
Awesome.
Okay, that's my bad. You guys know I'm not tech savvy, so I apologize. Welcome to Dialed In, joined by Luke Brenneman and our producer extraordinaire and contributor as well, Casey McAllister. Our show presented by UDF and Encore Technologies. Luke, how are we doing today?
I'm good. Dialed in right now. It was a slow start plugging in the show this morning, but it's noon. It's Thursday. It's almost Friday. That's all that matters. There's plenty to talk about this weekend in sports, so I'm glad that we are finally underway.
Okay, now listen, I don't make it a habit to brag about you or your sister on this show, but I am going to take a minute to brag about – what's that?
Are you bragging about your record right now?
No, I'm bragging about you. I'm just excited that you are starting to get back in the hunt for these picks, which we'll get to later on. And so we will make sure that we'll see if you can continue on some kind of a hot streak because you had a good week last week. Now, look, we know the Bengals and the Eagles are going to get together on Sunday at 1 o'clock at Paycor. You know, it's interesting. The more you read and the more you examine the Philadelphia Eagles, it looks like they are basically the equivalent this year so far of the Bengals from the NFC. Huge expectations, paying your quarterback a ton of money. Both have had success, in recent years. Fan base, a little upset, more than a little upset in both towns with the gross inconsistencies of each of these teams. We know the Bengals, it's questionable on Orlando Brown Jr. being able to go. We'll see when they take the practice field later today. Geno Stone in the same boat. Luke, your state of the Bengals right now coming into this game?
I think that it's almost necessary for a season-long reset. I was watching Off the Bench earlier this week, and I don't know exactly who said it. I think it was Elliott. I think Bengals fans and the Bengals community as a whole really needs to change their outlook on this entire season. When you start the way they did and now won 3 of 4, you can't really be thinking we're back, because when you say the thing back, it's Super Bowl contenders, because that's what they came into the season looking to do. And the word Super Bowl or bust, believe it or not, with the start they had a couple months ago, people were saying this season is Super Bowl or bust for Cincinnati. and it looked like they had a sub 10% chance to make the playoffs after the first month. Now you win 3 of 4. You host the Eagles. These are games you have to win no matter what, even to sniff the playoff hunt. This is an Eagles team that hasn't scored a point in the first quarter all season. So like I said on the show on Monday, this Bengals team isn't going to get any spectacular win in the next couple weeks until they play Baltimore on Thursday Night Football. That is the statement game, and they have to continue to just claw their way. This defense is improving every week. I know it's been the Giants and the Browns, but get gritty wins like the way they've done it. That's totally fine by me, and then we'll assess the season once we see the Ravens in the first week of November.
Casey, what do you think here? Even in wins here lately, you've not been very excited about this team.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of with Luke on the idea that the Eagles aren't going to get me back in the boat, per se. Of course, it's my job to pay attention to the team, but if I was a fan, I'm circling that Ravens game as the game that is really going to decide whether or not the season is truly back on or if it's just kind of going to be a wasted effort. Yes, they can get above 500 before going into Baltimore, but if they lose that game in Baltimore, it's the difference between a 500 team and a 6-4 team, and I think that's all the difference in the world. They are firmly in the playoff race at that point, and I have a pretty good shot of having control of a seed winning that game. So I'm not trying to look ahead of Baltimore. I know the question was, how do we feel about the remainder of their season? But it's got to be that game, right? This Eagles team, yes, they're a good team, but it's not the game that makes me all the way back in. We're just not there yet.
Well, I always look at things like, and a lot of this is coach speak. And generally, I can't stand coach speak. But in this case, when you start the season at 0-3, you are constantly fighting an uphill battle to get back to 500. They've won 3 of their last 4. You can't even think about using that word playoff or those words postseason until you are at least a 500 team. They've been able to focus in winning 3 of the last 4. That's why, and it seems like when you start 0-3, you're staying every single week. It's a must-win game. The difference between being 4-4, or if you lose and you slip to 3-5, is now you're 2 games more in the hole, and you know that Baltimore's looming 2 weeks away. And let's be honest about it, fellas. I mean, look, Baltimore looks unbelievable right now. Now, the Bengals gave them all they wanted, had a chance to win, probably could have won the game, should have won the game when they played them the first go-around. We know that didn't happen, so it's old news. But they have got to win this game this week. And there are a couple things that worry me about this game. I want to start with the Philadelphia pass rush. The only other game where the Bengals saw a pass rush equivalent to this Eagles team was against the New York Giants, and they could not handle that pass rush. The offense looked brutal. That worries me. Luke, you agree, or you think they can tidy this up? And especially if you don't have Orlando Brown Jr., who's having a great season.
Oh, it's absolutely, I think, the primary thing to be worried about, because if you're going to go off recency bias, this Cincinnati defense is going to be ready to play on Sunday, because this isn't a Philly offense that is blowing anybody out of the park right now. I mean, their best win of the season was last week. It was the most complimentary football they've played all year. Still did not score a point in the first quarter. So this is where it's kind of like mano-a-mano when you look at the matchup game. The Bengals start the season slow. They start games slow. It's time to go out there and punch Philly in the mouth. These are 2 head coaches that are very similar in different spots right now. You have Nick Sirianni, all the high expectations. This offense is loaded, and they can't score. He's catching a lot of heat right now. Then there's Zach Taylor. Obviously, plenty of reason for him to catch heat in regard to the last couple of Bengals losses, looking back a couple weeks. But for the sake of the matchup this week, I think it all comes down to the line of scrimmage, and a confident pass rush is something to be really worried about. These guys were just plowing through the Giants' offensive line. And yes, you can say Daniel Jones has absolutely nobody to protect him, but I really would argue the way they played last week, it was so just dominant that no matter who the line was, they're going to get to the quarterback. So Cincinnati's got to be ready for this, whether it's quick RPOs, whether it's handing the ball off on 3rd and medium, just trying to avoid pressure from the outside and getting the ball out of Joe Burrow's hands quick, because he gets in a groove when his completion percentage is high, and he's got to get the ball out early because he held on to it a lot, especially in that first half against Cleveland.
The only other big name, quote unquote, big name running back that they've gone against this season was Derrick Henry. And they did a great job on Henry until it got into the overtime and he busted loose on the long run. And it looked like, if you didn't watch a game, it looked like Henry had a monster game because of that one run. He did not. They are facing another such running back this weekend in Saquon Barkley. I have long maintained that when Barkley is healthy, he is the best all-around running back in the NFL. He runs with power. He runs with incredible speed. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He can do everything. Casey, how can they handle Saquon Barkley this Sunday?
Ooh, Tom, I think they could handle Saquon. They could easily stack the box, but then they're going to just get burnt over the top with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. It's going to be a tough day for the Bengals. They're going to have to kind of decide what they want to do as a team defensively in order to slow them down. And we've seen how Saquon can completely take over a game, just like this last weekend. He had 170-plus yards on the ground, and then he added like a 30 more in the passing attack. He's really, really special, Tom. But like you said, we were able to handle Derrick Henry for most of the game. But what happened? Lamar Jackson throws for over 300-plus yards, 5 touchdowns. I mean, it's going to be one of those games where I feel like we're going to have to play much, much better than what we have this entire season, and it's going to be a tough one, Tom. I don't think there's exactly a way that you can contain Saquon in this offense. You can only do so much to limit them. I expect it to be a shootout, to be honest with you. I think this is going to be one of those games where Burrow's going to need to be on top of it. He's going to need to play perfect, and if not, it might be a long day for the Cincinnati Bengals.
Well, but Burrow's made the comment this week during his press conference. He says, look, basically he said the same thing that I said earlier, but it's coming from Joe Burrow and not Tom Brenneman. He's a lot more important to hear from than me, where, every game is just so pivotal now. And he made the comment a couple of weeks ago, I have to play nearly perfect football. And I just can't, fellas, for the life of me, I just can't figure out for the life of me, and Luke, maybe you have an answer. I don't know if anybody has an answer. I don't know if Joe Burrow has an answer. I just don't understand how this offense, with the players that it has, I can't understand how they go through an entire half of football. And we've seen it last year. We've seen it a number of games already this year. We saw it in a full game against New England, in a full game against the Giants, and nearly a full game against the Browns, where these guys can't seem to get out of their own way. And I just don't understand it. I mean, the defense doesn't have the stars that the offense has. I'm not making an excuse for the defense, but we've noted on this program many, many times. The Bengals are spending, they're in the top 5 of all NFL teams on the amount of money that they're spending on their offense. They're in the bottom 8 in the amount of money that they're spending on their defense. So, logic tells you, your offense is probably going to be a lot better than your defense. And the number can be a little bit skewed just on Burrow's contract alone. But you're not even paying Chase the big bucks yet. You're paying Higgins the big bucks because you tagged him. But I don't know, and we've seen it in 2 games. If they're forced to win a shootout, Luke, can they win a shootout?
I mean, there's no question. I think the biggest key is if you look at the games the Bengals have lost, it's been the shootout. So it's the idea of playing complementary football. The offense hasn't looked great in their last 2 wins against teams that it probably should have looked better. Obviously, the Browns they do have a notable defense. They have superstars everywhere. They have a really talented secondary. But when push comes to shove, I think you have to look at the idea of this Bengals offense they did show up on Monday Night Football against the Commanders. But this Sunday is when they're going to have to show up. They have to score first in this game. This is an Eagles team that I've mentioned it so many times already. The start of this game is everything. This particular game is everything because you're either looking at an even 500 record as you leave October and say, now we go play. Now we go. We're 500. We had one of the worst starts that we could have ever imagined with this roster, this lineup, this contract situation. But we're 500 at the end of the day, and let's go compete for a playoff spot, let alone a playoff seed. Then you lose this game to Philly. Now you're 2 games back of 500, and you have the Raiders, which obviously the Bengals will find themselves as slight favorites in that game no matter what. But then you have the Ravens. So then you kind of have to look at the way Baltimore's playing as a potential loss, the way Cincinnati's going right now. So Sunday is a big day, in my opinion, for complimentary football. We have not seen it all year. I want the offense to click and the defense to click at the same time, and the Bengals are on. When they string together, turn the ball, they create turnovers, and then Joe Burrow is just boom, boom, boom right down the field.
Well, that brings us to a different question. And boy, this is one that we have certainly talked about on this program, not necessarily at this time of the year, because it is the time of the year for the trade deadline. But I got to tell you, fellas, I look at other teams who are thinking about getting themselves in a position to win a Super Bowl, not just get to the playoffs, but to put themselves in a position to win a Super Bowl. The Buffalo Bills have been unable to do that, but they go out and they get better by bringing in Amari Cooper. Now the Kansas City Chiefs, for the 3rd straight year, pull this off. 3rd straight year. And the last 2 guys that they brought in, while not stars, no question about that, not stars, they made plays that helped them win Super Bowls in back-to-back years. Do you think, and Casey, I guess I'll start with you. Do you think there is any chance on God's earth the Bengals are going to do something they never do and make a trade to get better?
The answer is no. They will not make a trade. And it's more, I think, of a sign of faith that they have the guys on the roster to compete and win. And that's what they're going to try to advocate for, I guess. I think that there's plenty of holes that they could target today and try to get better. But also, too, and to maybe a fault, they value draft picks. They value the future of this football club. And whether or not we think that they'll actually hit on those picks or not, they will refuse to even part ways with even a 3rd-day pick, even if it's for a player that drastically improves a position of need. So I find it funny that we talk about this every season. There's plenty of targets that we could talk about, but the Bengals, man, they just don't ever buck this one trend. And we'll talk about it, but I just don't see them doing it, Tom. I don't see them pulling the trigger on trying to improve this roster at the trade.
Well, Rick made a great comment here in the chat saying a Bengal never changes his stripes, and that would be accurate here. And Everett asked, am I talking about Tony? Yeah, Tony 2 years ago made a couple of big plays in the postseason. I said he's not a great player. Hardiman same thing last year. But they made plays. And we've talked about on this show, when you get into the second round of the playoffs or the championship game in the postseason, 1 or 2 plays are going to decide, 3 or 4 are going to decide the game. And if you traded a 5th-round draft pick, okay, and that's basically what these teams are getting for these star receivers. Or very good receivers, let's put it that way. Are you kidding me? A 5th-round pick to get a guy who could help you get to the playoffs or win in the playoffs? Luke, come on, what are we talking about here?
It's pretty frustrating. And if you look at the way that Cincinnati has drafted the past couple of years, it makes it sting a lot more. Because if you look at the move the Chiefs made, whether it's a 3rd-round pick or not, it's getting a superstar receiver, yes, he's in the back end of his career, but DeAndre Hopkins inside the 20-yard line is a threat, no matter if
Yep.
he's on the inside, outside. I mean, he's a big dude who has just made some ridiculous plays throughout his career. So if you're the Kansas City Chiefs, you're trying to win 3 Super Bowls in a row here, guys. You are easily shipping out that third-round pick to get DeAndre Hopkins paired with Patrick Mahomes and pretty much just continuing to complete the puzzle. And I think that organization, top to bottom, when you're playing winning football at that level, it's just the next step up. Every single facility, every single department from the front office to the guys on the practice squad are giving it their all, and it's just a successful, well-oiled machine right now. And a lot of that credit has to go to Patrick Mahomes because he makes so many winning plays every single Sunday, no matter if it's me as his slot receiver or Mecole Hardman. So I think you have to give credit to where it's due. The Chiefs do everything right now. And I don't necessarily know if Cincinnati's doing everything wrong. I think it's 2 different styles here. And more importantly than going and getting better players in Cincinnati, the players that we have here now and the players that we are paying need to perform, whether it's these defensive veterans that we brought in or the offensive guys. There is always room for improvement. And with the Cincinnati Bengals team through the last couple weeks or the first couple weeks, there is a ways to go. So let's forget about bringing other guys in and at least have the guys who are expected to excel play to that caliber.
That's a fair. I mean, that's a more than fair point. But I think I speak for a lot of Bengals fans, and I am a Bengals fan. I get on them a lot, but I've never bought into that line. You hear a lot of fans say, they're not trying to win. I don't believe that for a second. I really don't. Whether you're talking about Mike Brown, Bob Castellini. Now, there's some guys that go about it in different ways than those guys do, ways which will please a lot of fans. And Kansas City, again, case in point. They've won back-to-back. Their owner could say, hey, look, we've won it 2 years in a row. We've got good players on this team. The guys we got go play better. But that's not – they're doing that, but that's not all they're doing. And when you start adding in wanting a new stadium or changes made to the current stadium and wanting a new practice facility and all this kind of stuff, knowing there's a good chance T. Higgins is not back here next year, and what does this offense look like without T. Higgins next year? We could talk about that from now until next Tuesday. I just think that, if there is this quote-unquote window, I feel like that the franchise should do everything it can to try to make it happen sooner rather than later, because there are no guarantees for tomorrow and what you're going to be. They have progressively taken steps backwards each of the last 3 years. Super Bowl to a championship game to not even making the playoffs. And where are we going this year? Isn't that a fair question? Fellas, either one of you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fair question, Tom. And not to mention the fact that Paul Brown isn't getting any younger. It's
Mike
frustrating.
Brown.
Mike Brown. Son to Paul Brown.
Yes.
It is a little frustrating that we are here now, and there's just no sense of urgency, or there's no sense of awareness of how the outlook of this team, where they're projecting towards, where their trajectory is leading them towards, if they don't turn it around here the next few weeks. If they don't beat the Eagles, they are 2 games behind 500, and they're firmly out of the wild card race as it stands at the moment. I just don't see how you don't get a little more aggressive, how you don't try to improve your team. I think there are moves that they could make that are more that don't have to be superstar type levels of moves either. Like, you could trade a 5th round pick for someone's backup tackle and get depth there on the offensive line after the injuries we've sustained. You could go get a guy at edge rusher who's not getting a whole lot of playing time right now, or maybe just look at the Giants with Azeez Ojulari, who just got 2 sacks on you not a couple weeks ago, and maybe you bring him on your team. He's sitting behind 2 guys as soon as Kayvon Thibodeau comes back. he's going to be on the bench again. So why don't you try to make a move like that? There's stuff like that they could do, and they refuse to. They don't do midseason trades, and it's very, very concerning that we haven't gotten to that point yet. I just don't understand, Tom. I don't get it.
Luke, you want to add anything to this before we move on to our picks?
I'm not going to add much. I think it comes down to styles and at least the consistency, because I always take this back to Jerry Jones. At the end of the day, we all knew Jerry Jones was going to pay CeeDee Lamb. We all know that Micah Parsons is probably going to be a Cowboy for an extended period of time. We all knew Dak Prescott was going to get the money that he wanted to get. And Jerry Jones, as controversial as he may be with some of the stuff he says, from a Dallas Cowboys fan's perspective, he gets the stuff done that they, at the end of the day, want to get done as a fan base. And it has not worked for them.
You're right.
So I'm all about pleasing the fan base and looking like you're trying to win the Super Bowl every single year. But at some point in time, these dynasties, if you will, are methodically created. If you look at the Chiefs, they sat Patrick Mahomes after they drafted him. They were still a playoff team, like a wild card caliber team with Alex Smith.
Yep.
And then they continued to improve. Then Mahomes is brought into a really good situation. And next thing you know, they're knocking on their door trying to win 3 Super Bowls in a row. It's the same thing in New England. Even as guys got older and retired, it feels like they lost Hall of Fame veterans every single year on defense and offense. Somebody was filling that position, and it was just a well-oiled machine. So I think in any level of sports, there's the argument where if you are a championship caliber team, the backups and third stringers are getting just as good right behind all the superstars, and they're ready to fill in when need be. And we saw that a lot with the Bengals defense when they went on that Super Bowl run. However, we're not seeing it much this year. They are an older group. They brought in older guys, and it's time to make that adjustment and really start to click come November.
You know, Steve Ross brings up in the chat, says, look, how many franchises have been to a Super Bowl and a conference championship game in the last 3 years? There are 2 of them, the Bengals and the Chiefs. And he says, I would say that's pretty successful. And that would be accurate. Steve, the point I made is you're going this way and not this way. Okay? You went to the Super Bowl. Fantastic. You went to the championship game. Fantastic. Loss. And then the next year, granted, Burrow gets hurt, but you don't make the playoffs. And now here you sit another year later, beginning the year against a last place schedule, because you were a last place team in your division last year. And they start the season 0-3, 1-4, and now they're 3-4, and they're trying to get back to 500. That's the only point I'm making. They're going this way and not this way. That's it. That's all I'm saying. All right, Luke, you run the picks. And as I said at the beginning, I'm bragging on you. You're starting to catch some fire here. You've got wind at your sails. Where are we going into this week's picks? You take it away from here.
Well, I know Casey built a little bit of a standings graphic, so if he can throw that up, that is probably going to sting a little bit on his end. But as of right now, yeah, I mean, you're dominating. If you win 27 out of 47 picks, you're pretty dang good at this stuff so far. I'm 1 game under 500, coming off a 5-2 week. I mean, I can't pick up any ground. If you win 5 of 7 games and you're not picking up ground, it does look a little bit bleak for me. And then Casey, 3-4 last week isn't going to kill you, but when you're in DFL, as they say, dead freaking last, Casey, 5 games under 500. Casey, I think let's team up here and just try and sabotage my dad to make this at least somewhat a little more exciting down the stretch. There's so much football to be played, though. We're picking 7 to 8 games every week. So I'm just going to try and stay consistent, stick with the strategy, and see what happens at the end of the year.
Okay. Casey, you have anything to say for yourself before you once again screw this whole thing up?
DFL. Man, that hurt. That one hurt. Dead freaking last.
He cleaned it up for you, though, at least, Casey. He cleaned it up for you.
Yeah, he did. He did. Clean it up quite a bit for me. Certainly doesn't make me feel any better. I'm going to have to really pick it up. I'm going to really have to pick it up. There's a couple games where we all picked the same game, and I flipped a couple of those games. And I think I lost every single one of those. So that's probably where I should start. Stop flipping games. If we're all on the same side, there's probably a good reason for it. So let's see if that ends up playing out for me in the future.
All right, Luke, where are we starting? Here we go. This week's picks. Here we go.
All right, let's Let's start with a really good game here. And College game day is to Bloomington this weekend. And
Yes.
I would make the argument that they should be going to Annapolis, Maryland, because Notre Dame and Navy on Saturday is a heck of a game. Navy is 12.5-point home underdogs, but this is a Navy team who is inside the top 25 in the rankings. We're looking at a potential ranked on ranked Army versus Navy matchup right now. The spread is 12.5. Guys, if I could advise you to do something right now, I would go, if you're 21 plus, and put a little money on Notre Dame to win the national championship, because I think this team has extreme value considering they have an awful loss in the middle of the season, and they have done nothing but kick everyone's butt since. This is a well-coached team. They had a bad loss early. They're going to beat Navy and cover 12.5.
Oh, man.
There is zero chance Notre Dame is going to compete for a national championship. N-U-N, none.
All right.
And I may use my word. All right, Casey, go ahead.
Well, Tom, I love hearing what I'm hearing from Lukey here. I want to hear more of that. National championship on the way. My fighting leprechauns. Let's go. Yeah. Notre Dame to the championship. I love it.
No way.
It's the greatest story since whatchamacallit? Rudy. Great story.
Rudy, okay, all right. I'm taking Navy to cover here. They're a hard team to play. I don't think they're going to win. I think that Notre Dame will win. But 12.5 is a lot of points, man. And this Notre Dame offense is not a juggernaut offense by any stretch of the imagination. Riley Leonard, you don't know what you're getting series to series. He's got a lot of talent. But I think Navy hangs in there and covers at 12.5. All right, Luke, what's next?
All right, now this is a little SEC matchup. Mizzou versus Bama. This one's in Tuscaloosa. The spread's just under 14, so 13 and a hook, obviously favoring the Tide. I'm a big Alabama guy. I'm not going to give up on them yet. I think that this is just a team that no matter who's their head coach, you can say what you want. In this new post-Saban era, this Bama team is really good. They proved it when they dominated Georgia in that first half. They still hung on to win the game. Obviously, they have some ugly losses that really make you scratch your head, starting with Vanderbilt. They've fallen way down in the rankings. I think this is a perfect bounce-back spot. They win this game by 3 or 4 touchdowns and cover the number.
Well, I guess I'll go here once again.
Yeah.
Roll Tide, baby. I think everyone's really down on Alabama after losing to Vanderbilt. I think that those 2 games that they've lost so far were just bad matchups for them. And I just don't see how this matchup versus Mizzou is anywhere close to Vanderbilt. I like Alabama. I like Jalen Milroe a lot. I think that, he's still a young kid. He's still going to figure some things out. Their defense is very suspect.
Yes.
I like Alabama here. I think that they cover this.
Well, make it across the board. I'm going with a Crimson Tide as well. I'm not a Missouri guy in any form or fashion. They're lucky they don't have 2 or 3 losses already this year. So I'm going with Alabama. What's next?
This is probably the hardest game to pick, maybe of the entire season so far. LSU, A&M. In College Station, A&M, 2.5-point favorites, pretty much just to pick them at this point. And sometimes 2.5 can come into play. I don't know. I think I have to pick the home team here. I think A&M has a better quarterback. I'm really not sold on Nussmeier. And he just makes some throws that are so questionable. That win against Ole Miss and the drive that he led them down the field to force overtime just showed a ton of guts. And you got to give the kid credit, but I still don't think he's as elite as LSU is ranked. And I think that they fall to A&M on the road. It's going to be a super tough game. I think a field goal wins this one in the last seconds.
All right, Casey?
Yeah, just looking at some of the numbers and the analytics here, public is all on LSU right now. And that, for me, just spells the disaster of LSU. It's really hard to play at Texas A&M. So I think I'm going to go with Texas A&M here. A field goal spread. You're giving me a field goal minus the hook. I'll take that. I'll take those chances.
Both of these teams have continued to just go out and win games. LSU lost, or A&M lost the season opener at home, as we know, to Notre Dame. And they've been rolling ever since. They haven't lost since. LSU lost its first game of the year. against USC. And, you know, while maybe not the typical years past LSU sort of domination, they sort of getting hot and cold, but they're winning games. And so I'm going to give the edge to the home team in this one. I'm one of the few people around here who likes Brian Kelly. I think the guy's a phenomenal football coach, head football coach. But A&M, I think that 2.5-point favorite is because they are at home. I think if this game were at LSU, I'd pick LSU, but I'm going to take A&M.
All right, time to move on to some pro ball. Let's start with the Bears and the Commanders on Sunday. Two teams that the Bears kind of did have high expectations. I think it's always super concerning to think that people who pick a team to win a division or make the postseason, they have a rookie quarterback, but they looked extremely rocky early on. Now they've totally settled in. They find themselves as road favorites against a Washington team who looks like they can score 40 on everybody right now. Therefore, I'm going to take the Bears. It's weird. It's ugly. I normally like home underdogs, but this Chicago team, the last couple of weeks, they've proven that no matter how they can get it, they know how to win, and I think that they are going to make the postseason when it's all said and done. That division is really good.
Yeah.
All right, Casey?
Yeah, I also think it's a weird spread. I think the injury to Jaden Daniels has not officially been or I don't know what the status of him is just yet.
Right.
He did not practice. That's what I'm hearing from Jacob, which just makes me feel like he might be a little rusty. I mean, it was a rib injury too. Was it to his throwing side? I don't know. That to me is just not good news. I think the Bears are finally coming into their own at the moment. I think their defense is really good. I think that offense is just finally starting to take off a little bit. And when you're telling me, if you're going to compare the two rosters, I think I like the Bears roster a bit more than the Commanders. So I'm going to take the Bears here -1.5.
Okay. I'm going with the Commanders. And you're right. I mean, obviously, so much is predicated upon Daniels playing and how effective will he be. It's a shame he's not fully healthy because these were the top two quarterbacks coming out last year. And it would have been fun to see them go against one another fully healthy. Commanders, though, I think they got a pretty good thing going there. And they're going to be at home, so I'm going to take them to cover here, to win outright in this game against the Bears.
Okay. Let's move on.
All right, next game we're looking at, it's the Bengals.
Here we go.
2.5-point favorites. This line opened up at 3, dropped down to 2.5. I think it's pretty fair. Both of these teams kind of carbon copies of one another in the AFC and NFC. I'm going to pick the Bengals. In a coin flip game, I'm always going to go with hometown bias, so not much analysis here. I'm just really looking for at least 3 quarters of complimentary football. That's enough to beat the Eagles. It wasn't enough to beat the Ravens. It wasn't enough to beat the Chiefs, but I think it is enough to beat the Eagles. I just want to see improvement every single week out of both sides of the ball in Cincinnati. I think we see it this week and get a big win and get back to 500 before the Raiders.
All right, Casey, what do you think? You've been down on your Bengalis here lately. You've been really down. Really down.
There it is.
Tom, come on. I'm not picking against the Bengals. Just not going to do it. Just not going to do it.
All right. Okay. I'm taking the Bengals as well. I think they're going to come out and be ready to play. There are things that worry me about this. I would not be surprised, nor would any of you, nor would anybody watching, be surprised if they laid an egg. But I think they come out, they get back to 500. They get the Raiders next week. And then, as we've talked about already, it sets it up. Luke, I think that's is that our last game, or are we doing tonight's game?
No, we have 2 more games.
Oh, okay, my bad. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, we got to do 4 NFL games. Bills, Seahawks, this is a really good slate. This one coming in the afternoon portion of it. I'm going to take the Seahawks here. I kind of look at their team as a season-long approach. It's going to be volatile. It's Geno Smith. It's a new head coach and everything that surrounds that. But this is a really talented roster. Seattle is a very tough to play. You can keep the 3 in Buffalo. I think Seattle wins this game outright. I think the Seahawks are a playoff team, and I'd keep an eye on that the rest of the year.
Okay. Case?
Yeah, I favorited the Seahawks quite a bit entering in the season. I thought the new head coach, guy previously from Baltimore, would do such a good job with this defense. I thought he had enough players there to really change the look of this team. And it's just the same Seahawks. It's the same Seahawks team, and that kills me because I feel like they've got a very talented roster, but it's still performing at a level that's just not good enough. And especially when you're playing a team like the Bills with Josh Allen and they newly acquired Amari Cooper, I feel like that offense is going to be just too much for them to handle, and I think that Geno Smith is just not going to be able to keep up. So I think the Bills outright win this game, of course. Cover that spread -3, and yeah, Tom.
I'm with you. I take Buffalo. I just think that they're starting to gain some momentum and confidence. Allen's taken better care of the ball, and that's been the knock on them in the past. As great as he is, he tends to give it away a lot. Not as much this year. I take Buffalo to win this game as well.
All right, final game, Sunday Night Football. Cowboys 49ers. Last time the Cowboys played on Sunday Night Football, they won at the buzzer against Pittsburgh. This time they find themselves as 4.5-point road underdogs going all the way across the country to Santa Clara. I really don't know here, guys. I don't think the Cowboys are very good. The Niners hung in there with the Chiefs, but they haven't even looked at peak Niner form, let alone semi-Niner form. But I guess I'm just going to bet on the Cowboys being really bad at doing that. I'm normally an underdog, especially in prime, but I'll take the year.
Well, this is the one game that I am switching my pick for. I think I initially had the 49ers here because they've just dominated the matchup between the Cowboys and the 49ers. But this one, I'm going to pick the Cowboys. You look at the 49ers roster right now, and Ayuk's out for the year. McCaffrey's out for the year. Debo's questionable. Jordan Mason, their running back, who's been playing very well, he's questionable. Their third-string receiver is questionable. Their fourth-string receiver is questionable.
Yep.
Kittle's hurt. Their entire defense is in shambles. They're just hurt. That's all it really comes down to, is that this team is just hurt, and they're not playing at the top level that the 49ers usually play at. So that's why I'm going to go with the the Cowboys here. I love +4.5 for them.
Well, I'm with you on everything you just said. I mean, both of you guys just hit the nail on the head, and I'll go with the home team just because they're the home team, and I can't buy into Dallas. They're just so unbelievably inconsistent, and I don't think they're very good. They might be good enough to beat this 49er team who's playing with a bunch of backups, but I'm going to take the Niners. They're at home. They really need this one, so we'll go with that. I know that rounds out the pick segment. I'm a little surprised that we did not, and I'd be curious before we let Luke get to class, allegedly. The UC football game, I think Saturday night is a huge game. There was so much bashing of Coach Satterfield last year, his first at Cincinnati. It was a terrible year. They are playing a lot better this year. They could easily be undefeated right now. They blew the game in the fourth quarter against Pitt, total meltdown, and they go on the road and they lose in a shootout at Texas Tech by 3. Does that mean I think they're really good? I don't know. But they're going out to Colorado, and they're going to be the ESPN game at 10 o'clock. It's going to be a national game. Colorado and Deion Sanders and his son Shador, they're having a great year. Travis Hunter, all that kind of thing. Luke, do you think UC beats Buffalo, yay or nay?
I'm not sure just yet, and I'm trying to pull up the spread of that game right now. I'll have it here in a second. It's just so tough because of how inconsistent Colorado is. If they can protect Shador Sanders and he dictates what he wants to do inside and out of the pocket, I really don't know if you can stop them. But then I go back to the Kansas State game that Colorado lost, I think it was 2 weeks ago, in the same window, ESPN, whatever. It's a tough place to play, but Kansas State came in, they had the game plan, they got up early. Colorado had a crazy comeback attempt. You could call it a comeback, but it didn't end up working out. So you're going to have to turn over Colorado because their offense is so, up and down. They're going to pick up a 40-yard touchdown on you, but you're also going to maybe pick off Shador Sanders a few times. I like this Cincinnati team. It would be a huge win and really revive this season because the fan base, you start it all down, you blow a game. It's like the worst spot you can be in to start the season. Everyone calling for Satterfield once again. But now they really are playing good football. I'm going to take UC, maybe a little bit of a homer pick. I'm not particularly a huge fan, but no reason to pick Colorado. I think UC, a road upset, would be awesome for the city.
Casey, who you picking? Colorado or UC straight up to win?
Just straight up to win. If I had to say straight up to win, I would probably go Colorado.
Okay.
But I think that this is going to be a fun matchup. I don't think this is going to be a blowout. I think this is going to be back and forth. I think both teams are very similar. I think both teams really struggle on defense, have a really good quarterback at the helm on their offense. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. UC's got to be able to run the ball, and they have an outstanding running back, and that's not a strength of Colorado. Colorado scores a lot more than UC does. UC allows fewer points than Colorado does. So, you got to keep their offense. It's an age-old adage, but you got to keep the Colorado offense standing there on the sideline as long as you can. Cut it down to an 8-possession game maybe for Colorado on offense. If you can do that, you got a chance. If you don't do that and you can't run it, you're going to get blown out of the gym. I'd like to see UC play well. Luke, before we let you go, the atmosphere in Bloomington. Last week you had big noon kickoff with Fox in town, and now Washington rolls into town to take on unbeaten Indiana, and it's college game day. What is the vibe before we get to what's the move?
You can't really write a better story. I mean, I picked up the beat reporting position for this team just kind of as what the heck. I didn't know anything about Indiana football when I came here. I learned about the Little 500 and the basketball team and Bobby Knight. But for this to be happening in the timeliness and first year of the Kurt Signetti era, it really is insane. And I don't say that word with ease. I feel like it gets tossed around quite a bit in sports. This is insane what is happening with this football team. To beat a Nebraska team 56-7, and that's not just like a fluke game where Nebraska played bad and Indiana played great. Indiana has not played a close game this entire season. They're in the top 3 of every single offensive category in the country. They were perfect in the red zone on touchdown scores in the last 2 games. I mean, this is ridiculous what this team is doing. So now to talk about the matchup. No Curtis Rourke. Heisman candidate, easily the best, maybe second best behind Cam Ward when you look at transfer quarterbacks in the country. He doesn't turn the ball over. They pick up 8 yards every single play. He is the gunslinger. However, he's not going to go. A thumb injury, and it's Taven Jackson. You can't really write a better story than this. Taven Jackson is the younger brother of Indiana legend, probably the biggest Indiana basketball name the past 5 to 10 years in Trace Jackson Davis, who's currently a Golden State Warrior and played last night. So you take a huge basketball name that brought Indiana back to the tournament. They went on a run with TJD, and now it's his little brother who transferred from Tennessee, was an Indiana kid, went to Center Grove High School, and he's going to have the ball in hand under center to lead the Hoosiers to a potential 8-0 start before they go on the road to play Michigan State, and then they'd be hosting Michigan after that. So I really think this Indiana team is going to go 11-1. That one loss would be coming in 3 or 4 weeks at Ohio State. But the way they're going right now, guys, if they can win with Taven Jackson and get Curtis Rourke healthy, I think this team can beat anyone in the country. They are really that good, and they are dominant on both sides of the football.
Well, if they go 11-1 on the year, they're going to be in a playoff because they're going to be at least 3 teams out of the Big Ten, at least, maybe more than that are going to be in the college football playoff. They go 11-1, and they'll be right there. And somebody made the comment in the chat earlier, which was a great point. Said, how about the national championship, the Bobby Knight title game, where it's Army against Indiana? How good would that be? All right, Luke, what's the move for the weekend, my man?
All right, I got a weird one this weekend. I'm sure you're not going to like it, but it starts tonight with Thursday Night Football. I think that the Rams win tonight, pull off the upset over Minnesota. So I'm telling everyone, take that to the bank. Start your weekend with a winner. Take the Rams +3. Have a wonderful weekend. College game day is the move for me. I'll be on the field doing my thing with the beat reporting for Indiana and Washington. It doesn't get much better than this. I'm so lucky for these opportunities. But this is going to be a good weekend. It's college game day, but it starts tonight. An early weekend winner, Thursday Night Football. I'm telling you guys, the Rams win tonight. It sounds gross. It's ugly. But trust in Matthew Stafford tonight.
Okay. Casey, what's a move?
So my move for the weekend is betting Miami to win their ball game. Because guess what? Call of Duty is coming out this weekend. And Kyler Murray, we all know what he's going to be doing. He's going to be sitting there playing Call of Duty all night. So that's what I'm going to be doing probably on Saturday, is playing some Call of Duty with some buddies, betting against the Cardinals on Sunday, watching some Bengals football, watching some college football, of course. But not a whole lot else going on, Tom. Some Call of Duty, some football. What more could you want for a guy's weekend?
You got it. There's a good college game on tonight, too, by the way. Syracuse against Pitt. Syracuse has only lost one game. Common Core's having a great year. And Pitt, we know, is ranked and having a great year. That's a big game in the ACC. So what's a move for me? Look, I'm on my way to the University of Virginia for North Carolina against the Cavaliers. It's such a beautiful campus. I can't wait to get down there. And so fired up for that, and hopefully get back in time to catch that UC game on Saturday night here on the home front. So I apologize to everybody for the technical problems earlier. That was all on me, not on anybody else. Casey was on his game. Maybe I got to do some kind of tune-up or check-in before we go on the air, because I get confused by some of this tech stuff. So forgive me. I'm an old guy, and I don't get it all. Luke, have a great weekend, my man.
Thank you. Good catching up with you guys, and I really hope I'm right, because I made a couple controversial takes. Nonetheless,
you did.
Hopefully you see the Hoosiers come out with a win. That's the move. I'm changing mine. I like the Rams tonight on Thursday Night Football, but it's all about Indiana this weekend. You guys have a good one. Thanks again.
All right, buddy. Love you. Casey, have a great week. Thanks for everything, my friend.
Yes, thank you, Tom.
All right, this has been Dialed In with Tom Brenneman, Luke Brenneman, Casey McCollister. Thanks to our friends at Encore Technologies and United Dairy Farmers. Have a great weekend, everybody. God bless.